$97,000. That is what your privacy costs you in Toronto by age 30. Not your rent, your privacy. The right to close a door and have nobody else's dishes on the other side of it. I am going to show you exactly how that number is calculated, why nobody warned you about it, and the 3-step exit if you are already paying it.
He's 25 years old, lives in Toronto, works a decent job, earns about $55,000 a year. After federal tax, provincial tax, CPP, and EI, he takes home roughly $3,700 a month. His first real adult decision after school, his own apartment, a 1-bedroom, nothing spectacular, just a box with a door that locks and silence on the other side of it. In Toronto in 2026, that box cost $2,400 a month. Everyone around him called it the right move. Growing up, independence. Time to stop living with roommates. Nobody in that chorus mentioned a number. Nobody told him what that advice would actually cost over 5 years. They talked about maturity. They never talked about math. And the people giving that advice were not wrong to give it. They were not lying. They simply repeated what had been handed to them from a generation where rent was a fundamentally different proportion of take-home income. Context changed. The advice did not. And here is the thing. I understand him completely. I spent years in sports dorms and shared housing, situations where you are never fully home. You cannot control the noise at midnight. You cannot control whose dishes are in the sink at 7 in the morning. You are permanently adjusting to someone else's rhythm, someone else's standards, someone else's version of what counts as clean.
So the first moment I had a real choice, I did exactly what he did. I chose to pay half my salary for my own walls. My own quiet, my own rules, half my salary, because the alternative was living inside conditions I could not control, and I had already done enough of that. I am not telling you that wanting your own space is a mistake. It is one of the most reasonable things a person can want. It carries a price that almost nobody calculates before signing the lease. The price is not $2,400 a month. It is much larger than that. And by the end of this video, you will have seen the exact number in black and white. A 1-bedroom apartment in Toronto averages $2,400 a month right now. A room in a shared 3-bedroom, same city, comparable neighborhood, averages $1,100. The difference is $1,300 every month, $15,600 a year. $15,600 is a ski pass, a summer trip to Europe, and 2 full months of groceries at a Canadian supermarket every single year. That is the price of privacy in Toronto. The gap runs across every major city. Vancouver, solo at $2,550, shared at $1,150, $16,800 a year. Calgary narrows to $11,400, roughly the cost of a reliable used car every single year you stay solo. Montreal sits at $10,800. The city changes the number. The math does not change. Back to him. $2,400 on a $3,700 take-home. That is 65% of his income going to rent. The standard financial planning guideline is 30%. He is more than double that. But it does not feel wrong because everyone he knows is in the same position. That is how structural traps work. They do not feel like traps. They feel like the way things are. If he were sharing at $1,100, he would have $1,300 freed up every single month. Over 5 years, 25 to 30, that is $78,000 in cash that simply does not exist in his account, gone to quiet mornings and an empty kitchen. And the 65% rent ratio is not just uncomfortable in the abstract. At that ratio, his checking account reaches zero approximately 9 days before the next paycheck every month. He knows exactly which week gets tight. He has restructured his grocery run around it. He has declined plans around it. The apartment gave him quiet. The math gave him a countdown. Now let me show you what happens to that number when you stretch the timeline past 5 years. At year 10, with continued contributions of $1,300 a month invested at 8% annual return, the total TFSA balance crosses $237,000. That is the standard compound output on this monthly input over a decade. $237,000 from choosing a room instead of a 1-bedroom in your mid-20s. That is not a calculation that requires a finance degree. That is a compound interest table on a number most people never thought to run.
At year 20, the balance reaches approximately $760,000. That is retirement-level wealth, built on a single housing decision made at 23. The gap between retiring with financial independence and retiring dependent on CPP is, for a very large number of Canadians, traceable directly to this decision, made once, automated once, and then left alone to compound across 2 decades, while the person living it went about their life.
The privacy premium in Toronto is not $2,400 a month. Stretched across 20 years with compounding, it is the difference between 2 completely different financial lives. The person who shared at 23 and automated the gap is not just wealthier at 45. They have options the other person genuinely does not have. The option to retire early, the option to change careers without financial terror, the option to take a year off without catastrophic consequences. The $760,000 balance is not just a number. It is the purchase price of genuine financial freedom. $78,000 is not the real number.
You already know your rent number. You do not need to open anything to find it. Say it right now, in your head or out loud, just the monthly amount. Now divide that by what actually lands in your account after all deductions. Your real take-home number. That percentage is your rent ratio. 30% or under, you have room. You can save without grinding for every dollar. 30 to 40%, you are on the edge. Every savings dollar requires a real fight to protect. Above 40%, you are structurally locked. The money you keep telling yourself you will save next month is already allocated before you open your eyes on the first.
Drop your number in the comments with your city. Toronto, 65. Calgary, 32. Vancouver, 51. I want to see the actual map of this problem across the country, not the published statistics, the real numbers from real people watching this right now. $78,000 in 5 years of privacy payments. That is the cash number. But cash sitting in a checking account is not the real cost either, because nobody who frees up $1,300 a month leaves it sitting completely untouched in a checking account for 5 consecutive years. Put that $1,300 a month into a TFSA, a tax-free savings account, and invest it in a broad market index fund at an average 8% annual return. Standard, boring, no speculation required. A TFSA is not a savings account at a bank earning 1%. It is a registered government account where every dollar of growth is permanently sheltered from tax. The gains are entirely yours. The government does not take a cut on the way in or on the way out. Most Canadians have access to this tool and use it incorrectly, leaving it sitting in a savings account inside the same bank where they do their everyday checking, earning almost nothing, accumulating no real growth. That is the wrong use of the most powerful savings vehicle available to any Canadian citizen. The tool is correct. The location is wrong.
Year 1. Total contributions, $15,600. Balance with compound growth, roughly $16,200. Nothing dramatic yet. It is supposed to feel like nothing is happening. That quiet is the signal the machine is actually running. Year 5. Total contributed, $78,000. The balance is approximately $97,000. $19,000 generated by compounding alone. Tax-free, without a single additional dollar deposited. Something shifted somewhere between year 3 and year 5. The portfolio began earning more each month from growth than new monthly contributions were adding. It started feeding itself. The machine does not need you anymore. It runs. The cost of privacy is not $15,600 a year. The cost of privacy in Toronto is $97,000 by 30.
Now, let me run the same calculation across the other cities, because the pattern holds in every market. In Calgary, the monthly gap is $950, $11,400 a year. 5 years of contributions at 8% produces a TFSA balance of approximately $68,000 by 30. The privacy premium in Calgary is $68,000. Most Calgarians making that solo versus shared decision at 23 have never seen that number written anywhere. Not from their bank, not from their parents, not from any financial planning material they have been given. In Vancouver, the gap is $1,350 a month, $16,200 a year. 5 years at 8%, approximately $107,000 by 30. Vancouver is the most expensive privacy decision in the country. $107,000 for a 1-bedroom instead of a shared room.
In Montreal, the monthly gap is $900. 5 years at 8%, approximately $65,000. Montreal has the narrowest privacy premium of the 4 cities. $65,000 is still a life-altering sum that quietly disappears into monthly rent payments across hundreds of thousands of Montreal renters who have simply never run the number. Every city, same trap, different invoice. I want to say something personal here, because I see this mistake from 2 directions. I opened my TFSA on time. That part I got right. What I got wrong was where I put the money. For 3 years, I chased positions that felt smart at the time. Crypto, speculative stocks, whatever appeared to be moving in the right direction. The account went up, crashed, partially recovered, crashed harder. 3 years in, I was standing almost exactly where I had started. 3 years of contributions. 3 years of time in the market. 0 net progress.
Then I made one change. Stop trying to find the clever angle. Set a $300 auto pay into one broad market index fund and left it completely alone. 12 months later, I had $3,600 that was actually genuinely still there. That was the first real money I ever built. $300 a month. With rent eating half my paycheck, $300 was the only number I could genuinely commit to every month without anxiety. And it was enough. Because compounding does not care about the size of the first contribution. It cares about when the first contribution arrives and whether it gets left alone long enough to work.
I want to spend a moment on why nobody showed you this math before today. The financial advice industry, the banks, the real estate agents, the mortgage brokers, the personal finance influencers running paid courses, has almost no financial incentive to explain what I just walked you through. The math that builds and protects your wealth generates 0 revenue for any business operating inside the financial services ecosystem. When you sign a lease on a solo apartment, your landlord profits monthly. When you decide sharing is temporary and you are ready to buy, your real estate agent earns a commission. When you take out a mortgage at the ceiling of your qualification, your bank earns 25 years of interest. When you feel financially behind and begin chasing speculative returns to catch up, the platforms and the course sellers collect their fees. Every standard step in the Canadian financial journey generates revenue for someone in the system. The one step that generates revenue for nobody is the step where you share an apartment for 3 years, automate the difference into a boring index fund, and do nothing dramatic for half a decade. That step is worth $97,000 to you. It is worth nothing to any financial business selling a product. There is no commission attached to it. There is no platform fee. There is no upgrade path. It simply works. Quietly, while generating no revenue for anyone except you. This is not a conspiracy. The businesses are not coordinating against individual Canadians. They are selling the products they have, and the products they have require you to spend money that could otherwise be compounding. The incentive structure was misaligned before you ever understood it existed. You were making financial decisions inside a system designed to route money away from your TFSA and toward everyone else's revenue line. Not maliciously, structurally. Your parents are not the problem either. When they told you to get your own place and grow up, they were giving you advice from a generation where rent was proportionally very different from what it is today. The advice formed in a context where it made complete sense. The context changed. The advice did not get updated. Nobody sent the correction to the people who most needed it. That is the gap this video exists to close. The math is not complicated. It was simply never shown to you. Why do most Canadian renters never build real wealth? The median individual income in Canada is approximately $55,000 a year. That is enough to save meaningfully. The money exists. It passes through these hands every single month. So where does it go? Sequence. Rent leaves the account on the 1st, automatically, before any conscious decision gets made about anything else. Then groceries, hydro, phone, transit pass. Savings is whatever survives all of that. When rent is $2,400 on a $3,700 take-home, The amount that survives to potentially become savings is $1,300 to cover every remaining cost of a life in a major Canadian city. The financial planning industry has been saying pay yourself first for 40 years. That is reasonable advice in isolation. But they consistently skip the part where rent already paid your landlord first. Automatically, before you were awake on the first of the month. Pay yourself first from what, exactly? From what is left after the largest fixed cost in your life has already cleared without asking for your input? Rent is treated as immovable. Savings is treated as flexible. Flexible things flex to zero when pressure arrives, and the pressure is always there. A grocery bill that came in higher than expected. A parking ticket. A friend's birthday dinner you did not want to miss. A coat you genuinely needed in October. Every one of those expenses is individually reasonable. Collectively, they consume every flexible dollar in the account by the third week of every month, not because of personal failure.
Because savings was last in the sequence, and things at the end of the sequence do not survive.
The guy from the beginning of this video had a friend. Same age, similar income. This friend shared a place with two roommates from 23 to 27. The apartment was not entirely his. The schedule was not always on his terms. He did not love every part of it. Month 3, someone in the apartment forgot to pay the hydro bill, and service got suspended for 2 days. Month 7, there was a genuine disagreement about guests on weeknights that turned into a tense week. Month 11, the kitchen became a source of real friction for almost 3 weeks straight. He managed all of it, because the math on the other side of all of it was real. And he had decided before moving in that the math was the thing he was optimizing for.
He was paying $1,100, not $2,400. The $1,300 difference did not even get saved intentionally in the first year. It simply accumulated in his checking account because it had no urgent destination. Then he opened a TFSA, set a $500 auto pay into a broad market index ETF, and the machine turned on. Not because $500 a month is a transformative number in isolation, because $500 a month was a number that actually existed after rent had cleared. The rent had not already consumed it. That is the structural difference between the two people in this video. Not discipline, not income, not character, sequence.
By 27, he had contributed $42,000 across 4 years of consistent auto pay. His TFSA balance sat at approximately $51,000. He had never earned an exceptional salary. He had never made a spectacular investment decision. He had made one structural housing decision at 23 and automated the consequence of it every month without drama, without sacrifice, without anyone around him particularly noticing. 2 people, same city, same income range, same age. One has over $50,000 in a compounding account at 27. One is starting from zero. The only variable between them was $1,300 a month and what it was directed toward. 3 steps. All 3 start this week. Step 1. Open a TFSA if you do not have one. Go to a Canadian self-directed brokerage, Questrade, Wealthsimple, National Bank Direct Brokerage, and open a self-directed investment account. If you already have a TFSA sitting inside a bank savings account earning 1 and 1.5%, that is a registered parking lot, not an investment. Transfer it to a self-directed account and buy one broad market index ETF, XEQT, VEQT, VGRO. The performance difference between those 3 over 10 years is not material. The difference between opening the account this week and opening it in 3 months is real money you will never recover. Pick one and stop researching. The account takes roughly 20 minutes to open online and requires no financial knowledge beyond your SIN number and a decision about which fund name you prefer. Step 2, and this is the structural key that most people miss. Set your TFSA autopay to land 2 days before rent day, not after rent, before. When rent leaves first, savings collects whatever remains, which is typically nothing by the 15th. When savings leaves first, you adjust everything else around it. You find a way to make rent work. You buy the store brand that week. You cook at home twice more than usual. You skip one purchase. The sequence is the entire system. 2 days before rent, every month. Autopay or it does not happen. The practical distance between saving $300 a month for 5 years and saving $0 for 5 years is almost never about income and almost never about personal discipline. It is almost always about whether a single scheduled transfer exists in a banking app. One transfer, set once, running automatically every month without requiring a manual decision. That is the only real distance between the two people in this video. Step 3. If you are sharing right now, set a specific exit date. Not open-ended, not when I feel ready. An actual date, month and year written somewhere visible. 2 years from now, 3 years. Your own number based on your situation and your savings target. Share for that defined window. Invest the gap every single month on autopay. And when you finally move into your own place, you do not move in at $0. You move in with $40, $60, possibly $80,000 already running in the background. You are not starting from scratch at 28. You are walking in with a machine that has been compounding for 36 months. Moving in and starting from nothing versus moving in and continuing forward, those are two completely different financial lives wearing the same lease agreement on the same street in the same city. 2 years of sharing at 24 is not a sacrifice. It is a decision with a $97,000 return attached. Nobody calls a $97,000 decision a sacrifice.
5 mistakes I have watched people make with their housing costs. Every single one has a specific dollar consequence attached to it. Mistake 1, thinking in monthly costs instead of annual costs. $1,300 a month sounds like a convenience charge, something you pay for comfort and move past without particular analysis. $15,600 a year sounds like a financial decision that deserves a spreadsheet and a second look. They are the same number. The framing determines whether you act on it. The people who stay in this trap the longest are consistently the ones who have never once converted their monthly rent gap into an annual figure and written it down somewhere they can actually see it. Write the annual number down. It looks different than 12 monthly installments.
Mistake 2, the expensive one. And I want to be precise about the mechanism. Having the surplus money available every month and never automating it. I know people personally, not hypothetical examples, actual people who shared apartments for years, had lower rent, had the $1,300 surplus sitting right there in their checking account on the 2nd of every month, and it was gone by the 20th. Individually reasonable purchases, a dinner that was genuinely affordable, a weekend trip that was a fair price, something on sale that they actually needed. None of those decisions were wrong in isolation. Together, they produced 0 savings for 3 consecutive years. The savings that compounds is savings that leaves the account before it gets evaluated and spent. Autopay, not intention, not a note in a budgeting application, not a reminder that gets reviewed and then postponed. A scheduled transfer that runs automatically every single month, regardless of how the month has felt or what else is happening. The practical difference between someone who shared for 3 years and has $60,000 and someone who shared for the same 3 years and has $400 is in almost every case one scheduled transfer that either exists in a banking app or does not.
Mistake 3. Waiting for the right conditions before starting. Waiting for a salary increase. Waiting for rent to come down. Waiting for January. Waiting for some cleaner version of ready that perpetually sits one more month away. $300 a month starting this week is worth significantly more than $1,000 a month starting 5 years from now. Compounding runs on time. Time is the only resource in this entire equation that cannot be replaced once it is spent. Every month of delay permanently removes a month of compounding from the final balance. The machine cannot run backwards, and it cannot be fast-forwarded. Mistake 4. Using the wrong account type. Saving inside a regular taxable investment account means paying income tax on dividends as they are received,
and paying tax on 50% of every capital gain when positions are eventually sold. A TFSA removes both, permanently. Growth is sheltered. Withdrawals are completely tax-free. Over a 20-year period on identical investments in the same index fund, the difference between a TFSA and a non-registered account is tens of thousands of dollars surrendered to the government for no reason other than which account type was selected at the beginning. The fund is identical. The only variable is the 3 letters on the account label.
Mistake 5. Upgrading housing every time income goes up. This is the mistake that quietly erases more wealth than any other item on this list. A salary increase from $55,000 to $70,000 arrives, and within 3 months, monthly rent climbs from $1,200 to $1,800. The entire raise went directly to the landlord. The lifestyle improved. The net worth did not move a single dollar forward. Then the next raise comes, and the pattern repeats. Income climbs steadily through the 30s. Housing costs track alongside it in near-perfect lockstep. At 45, the income is real. The savings are not. The people who build real wealth on average Canadian incomes share one consistent pattern across all of them. When income increases, housing costs stay flat or rise minimally, and the entire surplus goes directly into the TFSA autopay without being reviewed first. The lifestyle does not expand to absorb the income increase. The savings rate expands to capture it. That one pattern, maintained through the 30s, is what produces the $760,000 balance at 45 that everyone around them assumes came from a much higher income than it actually did. If you have already made one of these 5 mistakes, you are ahead now. You have named it. You cannot fix what you have not named.
3 things. This week, not next month. First, log in to CRA My Account and check your TFSA contribution room. Under 3 minutes. That number is the total room you have accumulated since you turned 18. It is your runway. Know what it is. Second, set up a TFSA autopay today at whatever amount genuinely survives after your fixed monthly expenses. $300, $200, $150? The amount matters less than the date right now. Set the transfer to land 2 days before your rent date. Savings before rent. If you take nothing else from this video, take that one instruction. 2 days before rent, every month. Autopay. Third, calculate your rent-to-income ratio right now with the number already in your head. If it is above 35%, you are inside the trap. You now know the number, the mechanism, the 5 and 10 and 20-year compounding math across 4 major Canadian cities, and the 3-step exit. You have more information about this specific structural decision than most Canadians ever receive from any bank, any financial planner, or any institution with a financial interest in the outcome. That information is yours now. The only question is what you do with it in the next 7 days. What you do with that information in the next 7 days is the only variable that separates the 2 people in this video. Next video, I am going to break down another number that most Canadians have never fully calculated: your car. Not the monthly payment, not just the insurance premium, the real, total, all-in cost of owning and operating a vehicle in this country. The number is $1,261 a month. When I walk through exactly where every dollar of that goes, depreciation, financing cost, insurance, maintenance, fuel, parking, annual licensing, you are going to look at your car from a completely different angle. Subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you in that one.